Welcome to Bold Voices, a production of the Community Foundation of Broward, where we explore Broward's biggest issues, get to know some of the people and organizations creating a bold impact in our community, and take a deeper dive into the world of local philanthropy with the experts at the Community Foundation of Broward. And now it's time to be bold.
Thank you for joining us on Bold Voices, a production of the Community Foundation of Broward. One of our key issues in Broward County is, of course, the environment. And one of the organizations that is profoundly involved with the environment is the Everglades Foundation. We all know about the Everglades, but not everybody knows exactly how important it is to our sustainability in South Florida, our water, and other resources. So I'm very happy to welcome the CEO of the Everglades Foundation, Eric Eikenberg. Welcome to Bold Voices.
Ellen, thank you for having me.
Were you interested in the environment and the Everglades from childhood, or is this something that you grew into as you grew up?
Well, thank you for the question, because we're coming up on 30 years of my high school graduation from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas out in Parkland. And I was part of the first four-year graduating class at that high school. And we were, as listeners know, school sits right there on the close proximity to the Everglades. And when I was in school there, not much development was around the school itself. So you had a lot of cattle fields, a lot of cows.
Right.
Looking off on the baseball field, you see cows around there. So it was very underdeveloped. And from my memory, not much talk about the Everglades at that time. Certainly went through the science courses. I fell in love with government service, politics. But the issue was the name on the building, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. At the time, she was even alive when I was in high school.
Wow.
So, she really rang the bell many, many years ago on the importance of saving this ecosystem. So I guess it was not until college that I understood the importance of the Everglades. But ironically, I went to high school bearing the name of the matriarch of this effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other, I think, correlation people make with the Everglades is, it's what we drive through when we go from the East Coast of Florida to the West Coast. But it's so much more than that. Can you explain exactly what the Everglades contributes to our environment, our water, our resources?
A plethora of benefits. I will say the number one item is our drinking water. When you see the majestic views of the Everglades driving along Alligator Alley, looking north and south, the water that's out there is very porous. The limestone allows water to permeate through the limestone. It hooks into the Biscayne Aquifer, and it's the drinking water for all of Broward County, all of Miami-Dade County, southern Palm Beach County, and the Florida Keys. So you have close to 7 million people that rely upon this natural beauty for simple drinking water. And then, the benefits of the wildlife. You have 78 endangered or threatened species that call the Everglades home. You have the impact on fishing and boating, outdoor recreation. The ecotourism opportunities that are out there are significant. The issues with climate, we have mangroves, we have peat soil, we have wetlands. All that is important in the sequestering of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So there's, again, a multitude of benefits. But as we engage with people, it all starts with water. It's all about water. It's the common denominator. You have to have water here in South Florida to survive, to have to live, and it's the source of our drinking water.
How does the water end up different from county to county when it's starting in the same place? Where I live, I can't drink my tap water. It is not potable. Miami-Dade County prides itself on having the best drinking water, and it's true, you can drink right out of the faucet.
Yes.
What makes the difference from county to county or city to city even?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would probably need to defer to the local government's water treatment plants.
Okay.
And the infrastructure that's built by Broward County in particular, or the municipalities in this area. I'm a resident of Miami-Dade County, and yes, you're right. They take great pride in the water there. So we're drinking out of the faucet constantly. In Palm Beach County, the water source is more surface water, and we've seen moments when algae and toxins get into that water, and it has had an impact on drinking water. So if listeners are wondering about Broward County or their city's water, check in with the county's water system and how they're testing it, how it's operating, but that's more at the local level.
What about all of this talk about climate change, sea level rise? How does the Everglades, how is it impacted by ocean levels and temperatures as well?
The number one effort is to reconnect Lake Okeechobee down to Florida Bay. Listeners may recall 2013, 16, 18, we saw major water crises where Lake Okeechobee, right there in the center of the peninsula, the lake would rise, and the Army Corps of Engineers, who are responsible for the management of Lake Okeechobee, they would open the gates on the east coast and the west coast, and billions of gallons of polluted water would go east and west, killing not only all the fish and having a massive environmental impact, but also the economic burden, businesses that were shuttered or people laid off because of the water crises. Meanwhile, down in Florida Bay, it became too salty. The salinity levels in Florida Bay were 10 times ocean water. And you had, in 2015, almost 50,000 acres of dead seagrass floating along on the surface of Florida Bay. So this effort is to reconnect Okeechobee down to Florida Bay, get water flowing south. We need to store it, clean it, and send it south. By sending it south through the Everglades, through the river of grass, as Marjorie Stoneman Douglas wrote about, it goes back to the permeating through the limestone. It's the recharge for the aquifer. But it also is acting as a buffer on sea level rise on the coast. And case in point was Hallandale Beach a number of years ago, where salt water intruded into Hallandale Beach's drinking water supply. And the minute that happened, it was game over, to where the city had to build a new water treatment plant west of I-95. So by having water redirected through the Everglades, it's pushing against saltwater intrusion and the issues that we see along the coast. Is it the answer to all those questions? No, but it's an important factor in combating the impact that climate change is having, in addition to other things we need to be doing along the coast, resiliency, adaptive management. But Everglades restoration is not separate from the issues that we're dealing with along the coast. It needs to coincide. It works together. And that's why restoration of this massive ecosystem is so critically important.
You went on a road to restoration tour. Tell us what that was about and what you were able to accomplish.
Well, we find that when you have these moments of crises, everyone rallies and they want to see a change. They don't want to experience the negative impacts of these fish kills and other concerns of the toxic algae. So again, we've made significant progress over the last 7 years, but it's almost sometimes people have amnesia to it. And even though we're not seeing discharges at the moment, we're not seeing those negative impacts, we want to remind people that there's a plan in place. And certainly for the remainder of this decade, as projects are being built, it's putting a puzzle together and pieces are being formed. There's tremendous benefits within the system of delivering water in the direction that it needs to go. So this road to restoration was, again, highlighting the 3 estuaries that in the past have been in crises, meeting with chambers of commerce, realtors, fishing guides, the business community within these communities, rallying them to say, a lot has been accomplished, but we need to keep our eye on the ball to make sure decision makers in Washington, Tallahassee, are ensuring that these projects are finished. So again, it was highlighting the need for, in particular, a massive reservoir south of the lake that needs to be built.
This sounds like an incredible balancing act between letting nature do its thing and humans getting involved and either fixing what humans have created that is a problem or what may be a natural problem, and then creating a new situation, and it's ever evolving.
It really is. It's a great point. Humans have really messed it up, quite frankly. And you go back to 1900, the governor of Florida, Napoleon Bonaparte Broward. The draining of the Everglades began, or that concept started, in the early 1900s. Then you have Congress approving the Central and Southern Florida Plan, the CNSF plan to build canals and dam up the Everglades. After the 28 hurricane, he built the dike around Lake Okeechobee to stop that natural flow of water going south. And then to hook commerce from Tampa to Miami, Tamiami Trail, US 41, was constructed in the late 1920s. And that really decapitated the flow of water going into Everglades National Park. So all that to say, over decades, it's taken us a century or so to really mess it up. We got about a third of the Everglades left. But what was happening is the economic burden that the current way we manage the Everglades was visible to most, to all. And we were elevating it in a way that, let's solve it. Let's be the generation that fixes these ills and then passes it on to our children and grandchildren. So by elevating the road, simply the Tamiami Trail, by building 3.5 miles of bridges, for the first time in 100 years, you have water flowing into Everglades National Park. That gravity is pushing in there. and it's ultimately reaching Florida Bay.
And it seems like such a simple solution when the way you say it. And then, of course, there are always the challenges because growth and construction is important to our economy and for tourism. But at the same time, if we don't have the resources to supply to people, what good is it?
Exactly right. And, you can be a developer, you can support development and also support the environment. I mean, one of our co-founders was a developer. So we understand the balance that has to occur. People are coming to Florida because of the environment, because of the natural resources and the beauty of this state. So we have to ensure that we're all redoubling our efforts to protect it. So when issues of moving the urban boundary, Broward County, unfortunately, is built right up against the Everglades, but there's efforts in Miami-Dade County to move the urban line further west towards the Everglades. What a foolish idea, especially when you have billions of dollars that are potentially going to come down from Washington for Everglades restoration within Dade County. So we're urging the local officials to step back, ensure that you balance the needs of a population and the environment, and hopefully cooler heads prevail as we move along.
So as CEO of the Everglades Foundation, you spend apparently a fair amount of time speaking with politicians, leaders, business people about how they can best help. You went to Washington, D.C. to testify. What was that experience like with Congress?
Great privilege. I was invited to speak before the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. Tom Carper from Delaware is the chairman of the committee. And I was there to speak on the role that the Army Corps of Engineers has played within the Everglades. And it was a chance in a 5-minute statement to talk about the great success that we've been seeing over the last number of years. My closing statement, after demonstrating the progress, I asked Congress to stop. Don't stop now was the phrase. And Senator Carper immediately responded that, and we won't, was his line.
I love that.
And when you go to Washington, it's a very unifying issue. This is America's Everglades. This is not a Florida issue. It's not a Broward County issue. This is America's Everglades on the same par with the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, all of our monumental national parks across this country.
And it is a national park.
And it is a national park.
It's not just a bunch of water that's on both sides of a road.
Correct. The beneficiary of this work is a national park. So I learned the lesson years ago that this is a nonpartisan, is a unifying issue. Congressman Clay Shaw, who represented Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, the former mayor of Fort Lauderdale, he was the author of this massive plan to restore the Everglades that passed in 2000. So to continue that legacy, to make sure this generation finishes, great privilege.
Well, one of the key issues of the Community Foundation of Broward is the environment.
Yes.
Obviously, the Everglades is a huge part of our environment, our ecosystem. In what ways have you been able to work with the foundation, and have they worked with the Everglades Foundation to help you achieve your mission?
They have. They've been a great partner over the last handful of years. I tip my hat to them in 2021. It was important that when they created this sustainability program to really address the issue of curbing pollution, protecting our natural areas, making the community here more resilient to climate change. So they've stepped out to say, as a leader in a large community here in this state, that we're going to be at the forefront. So the Everglades Foundation is privileged to work with the Community Foundation of Broward County, not just on the issues relating to the environment, to the Everglades, but also making sure the next generation is properly prepared to take this on.
I know there's been a push to include teaching Everglades, the history of the Everglades, the importance of the Everglades in public schools in South Florida.
Yes, and this program began in 2014. Started over in Naples, and it has expanded across the state. Broward County, one of the early school districts to embrace this program. And quickly, what it's about, it's a program that was designed by teachers for teachers. And these men and women are on the front lines of educating our future leaders, not only in this community, but in this state, in this country. And we found that there was a lack of knowledge on why the Everglades is so important. So it's a literacy effort. It's an Everglades literacy effort. Folks can go to evergladesliteracy.org. You can see the expansive curricula that's there. It's free to any Broward County teacher that's listening. They can go there. They can see it. We had our 6th annual teacher symposium that brought together almost 200 educators from 17 counties, 17 school districts represented, including Broward County. And this is not something that we're adding on top of the work that they have to, or the lessons that they have to teach. It aligns with the state standards. They can go there into their intranet or however they pull the standards, and they can see this curriculum all aligned in what a Florida kid needs to understand. And it's not just public schools. We got a lot of private schools, charter schools. There's even homeschool children that are learning about this.
Have you had the opportunity to listen to young people, to children who are learning about it for the first time and get their feedback and what their perception is of the Everglades and the environment?
Yes, you watch elementary students, kindergartners, first graders, second graders, when they're exposed to just the diversity of animals, and to understand that the Everglades has a whole host of mammals and different types of fish. And
it's not just alligators, really?
Or snakes or pythons. So when you can engage at that very young age, if they go to a local zoo, they see the animals there, but then to understand that they're living out in the wild right here in our own backyard. And then as you progress through middle school and certainly in high school, and we created what's called the High School Everglades Committee, and these kids from around Florida come together to really talk to us about what, as a high school student, they want to understand, and to see that they're engaged on these very difficult issues, these very challenging issues, and they're very passionate about it.
Yeah.
The kids that are in high school today are very passionate about topics, and when they go off to college, they're going to be a lot more knowledgeable on why the Everglades, as a national example, needs to be certainly not just restored, but then perpetual protection.
Right. I feel like the kids are going to make the change that we need. I do a lot of work with Girl Scouts of Southeast Florida, and so much of that is about the environment, about the water, and how we can keep it sustainable, keep it potable. And, to see that from a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old is really inspiring. And I wish that adults could see it the same way. But that's what you do with the Everglades Foundation.
Yes. And the children, the kids at school, they've embraced this. They really, the knowledge base is increasing. But then it's also, it permeates through the school, from the teachers to the administration to the custodial staff. They see great pride in the fact that the school has embraced, and it's not just a kindergarten class teaching, it's moving the child from kindergarten through fifth grade. And when that happens, these schools become champions. We have a Everglades Champions program, and that program is growing leaps and bounds. You have it again in the middle school age bracket, high school for sure. And what I'm also heartened by is not just the level of knowledge that we're seeing in K through 12, but then you have students that are off to college and they're studying the science of the Everglades, and this fellowship and scholarship program that we have, partnering with a variety of universities, Broward College, to bring these students together during the course of the summer, just to expand their own collegiate understanding of why this is important too. So this continues on as boys and girls, men and women move through an educational system.
What would you ask adults today to do to support your mission?
Well, I would ask them to go to evergladesfoundation.org. They will see the work that this organization does. We've been around for 30 years. We do it in a manner that's solution-oriented. We work with both sides of the political aisle. We have a very diverse coalition of businesses, those that rely upon the Everglades for their livelihood. And certainly we raise awareness on why we all need to rally to save what's here. This is a critical time for us. And yes, we see issues with our climate. We see toxic algae. We see ecological damages that are clearly in front of us. But what are we going to do about it? And, there's efforts to ensure that projects are built that are going to solve these concerns, and reaching out to your local member of Congress to say, send money down for Everglades restoration. That continues to rise as far as the level of support.
So write to your congressperson.
Yes. The members of Congress from Florida, regardless of what party they're in, they do rally when we make these requests. So calling them in their office, sending them an email, sending them a letter, so that reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee can continue to remain on schedule.
And supporting the Community Foundation of Broward, because they do have funds that are specifically targeted toward environmental issues and also to support the Everglades Foundation.
Yes, certainly the science. We've got a tremendous group of scientists that are working each and every day on the science of the Everglades. So those that are interested in that regard, then you have the advocacy side, you have the education side. So partnering with the Community Foundation, they have a number of supporters that have an interest in any of those topics potentially. And the good news is that when we've briefed the Community Foundation on the work we're doing, they're always generous to say, oh, we may have someone that's interested, and they connect us or it works through. So they are a wonderful connector of the work we're doing with their donors, and that's been a great partnership.
I'm thrilled to hear that, and I hope that people who hear this will also take action in both ways, in multiple ways. One, with your own behavior. Two, by supporting Everglades Foundation. Three, by being involved with the Community Foundation of Broward. It's as simple as going to cfbroward.org and look at the work they do, all of the different issues that are so important to our daily lives here in Broward County and the state.
Yes.
And of course, by going to evergladesfoundation.org and getting educated. Do you need volunteers to support your mission? Is it donations, or is it really that letter writing campaign to the congressperson, or all of the above?
Well, it's all of the above, but primarily having a voice heard by a member of Congress or a state senator or the governor. That's important. I remember a few years back, and I've been around this process enough in Washington, Tallahassee to have these type of meetings, but we took leading business men and women who were actually being impacted by the way we manage water here in Florida, and they led the meeting. They talked about the economic hits that they were experiencing, the number of people they had to lay off. And the senior member of the state legislature, who had been in meetings for years, his response was, this is the best discussion we've had on the Everglades, because we were messaging the economic impacts to someone who was concerned about the economy. When folks are concerned about the species, when they're concerned about the carbon emissions, all of that is within this topic, but it's how you're delivering certain messages to certain people to get them to come aboard.
Right. You have to speak their language.
To speak their language and understand that it takes all of us. We may differ on other things, but on this one, South Florida cannot sustain itself unless we protect the Everglades and this drinking water supply. And that's why the momentum, the progress, it's contagious, it's real, and people really should, everybody's busy. Folks have their daily lives. I have kids. Folks have kids. They're running around with their kids. But this could be a make or break issue, and they need to become involved.
I could pick out 10 minutes of each day where we've gone down the rabbit hole of a social platform where we could just put that down and go to evergladesfoundation.org
yes.
and do something that is maybe more purposeful and more beneficial and enhances our lives.
So your point about social channels, if people are on them, the foundation has a very informative Instagram. And the issue there is, how are you messaging this? People are getting their news now from quick sound bites. At one point, we had 140 characters, to communicate news. So we try to deliver this in a way that's solution-oriented. It tells it like it is, but, you can have the science all day long, and we've got great science, but you have to engage in the political science because, again, the decisions that are being made in Washington, Tallahassee are impacting us here, and the Everglades is right up there.
What is your Instagram, your social media tag?
So on Instagram, Everglades Foundation, you can search us there and find us. On the platform formerly known as Twitter, you can
X.
Yeah, X. You can find us at EVERG Foundation, and then on Facebook you can search Everglades Foundation as well.
Okay, and then of course the simplest thing again is evergladesfoundation.org, and I'm sure you have links to each of those platforms.
That's right. You can't miss us on any of that. We got great content for folks.
Okay, is there a way that people can interact with you? Are there events or volunteer opportunities to really take an active role in supporting what you do?
Yes, our website has those type of activities and events. We have many days a year, but April the 7th is Everglades Day here in the state of Florida. It's in state statute. It's also Marjorie Stoneman Douglas's birth. She was born on April the 7th. So that's a moment where we can really highlight the work that's being done. There's community events that take place. It's Earth Month. You got the 22nd that shortly follows. But during the course of the year, whether it's giving days that folks can engage with fundraising, our funding is all privately raised. We don't receive any government money. So it's been the generosity of not only the Community Foundation and its supporters, but others across Broward County, and we're grateful for it.
Okay. I can't thank you enough for this breadth of knowledge, the depth of knowledge, and putting it into language that we can understand and helping us understand the importance of the Everglades to our survival. Eric Eikenberg, CEO of the Everglades Foundation. Again, the website, evergladesfoundation.org. And please always, anytime, visit cfbroward.org for the Community Foundation of Broward. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the education.
Ellen, thank you so much.
As always, for our last segment of Bold Voices with the Community Foundation of Broward, we bring in Kirk Engelhardt, the perfect person to wrap everything up, give us an overview. And Kirk, I have to say, after talking to Eric Eikenberg, I was reminded that the climate and our environment is not just about hurricanes or the heat. The whole Everglades, going back 40 years, the growth of South Florida was an impact on the Everglades.
Ellen, I grew up down here in Broward County, and I remember when Broward pretty much ended at Flamingo Road. It goes all the way out to US 27 now. Development the entire way. So yeah, this community has changed dramatically over the years. And throughout the years, the Community Foundation has been here 40 years, and we've really spent a lot of time investing in programs that try to combat climate change and preserve the Everglades. And Eric talked about some of those, one of those being the thousands of Broward students who have gotten an education about what the Everglades mean and why protecting the Glades is so critical for our drinking water and our livelihood here in South Florida. But we've done lots of other programs that we've supported too, the sand dunes and planting sea oats and renourishing the beaches to combat erosion, planting trees, 50,000, 100,000 trees across our community. Not only does that help the air quality, but it also helps with some of the heat It cools the place down a little bit. We have wildlife-friendly landscapes and habitats throughout our community, thanks to other partnerships that we've had. And, we've also been involved in energy conservation and water conservation education. And one of the other things that we supported not too terribly long ago was Broward's resiliency study. And that was an effort for the county to determine really the public costs and the economic benefits of taking action now to try to stem the effects of climate change.
Worth the investment and important for us to know in moving forward with protecting our environment and the agreement that it's something we need to address.
Yeah, so I think everybody can understand that if the Everglades wasn't there, our community would pretty much cease to function. We wouldn't have drinking water, and if we don't have drinking water, you can't live here, you can't work here, you can't run a business. Any way you slice it, it's the lifeblood of our community.
Right.
You have to have drinking water. And with sea level rise being something that's on the horizon that we've got to tackle, saltwater intrusion into the aquifer is really a concern. So we've got to act, and we have to be smart about what we do. And it really is for the preservation of our community as a whole. So to me, that's not a political issue. Everybody can agree you want the community to still be here and still function. And philanthropy really plays a major role in all of this, because there are things, the government can only do so much, but philanthropists can step in and fill in a lot of the gaps and actually move the needle faster, because government dollars often have a lot of strings attached to them, where philanthropic dollars can actually get to work right away and really have a tremendous, bold impact a lot faster. But what we hear from a lot of donors is, I'm very concerned about the environment. I want my dollars to support environmental causes, but I'm one person. I've got one sum of money. How can I possibly change something that is so enormous? And we say there's a lot of ways you can do that. And one of the ways is by partnering with the Community Foundation and this amplification effect that we talk about, where we pair you and your giving with other like-minded philanthropists who have similar concerns and want to tackle similar issues.
So cfbroward.org is the place to go to learn about everything that the Community Foundation of Broward is doing and find your way to get involved. So Kirk Engelhardt, Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Community Foundation of Broward. I look forward to speaking to you again after the next episode of Bold Voices.
Thank you for listening to Bold Voices. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and hope you'll be inspired to join us in creating a better Broward for all. If you'd like more information, visit us online at cfbroward.org, and remember to always be bold.